Hello, everyone. I wanted to show you how things went with that second grade student of mine so you can see how my lesson plan went and the kind of notes I took and what I'm thinking about doing for next time. So first I have to admit to something. After I recorded that video with this lesson plan that I wrote on while recording, I second guessed myself and I thought, you know what? I think I'm going to do two vowels at once. She's in second grade, and I was looking back at how I have planned the very first lesson for some of my other second graders. And I thought, I'm going to do short A and short O on the same lesson to get us going here because she's so far behind. I want to catch her up. And I'm also anticipating some schedule changes coming up, and I'm just thinking, okay, I got to get cranking with this girl. Well, she is so behind. So that is the exact reason why I shouldn't think that I can kick things into high gear. I cannot move quickly with this student, and I should have gone with my original plan, which I showed you. Let me show you what I did differently and why it didn't work. Okay. So this was the plan. It was just short A. If you remember, I was going to, I even planned out word families for her to make it even easier with the decoding. Okay, let's see what I did instead, and we'll see what parts worked and what parts did not work. Okay, let me zoom in. Okay, so pretty quickly into the lesson, I realized that it was not going to work to do both. And so all the parts of the lesson that included short O, I just had to cross out, and I'll just save that and do that another time. Okay, so I did decide to use the bridge the gap, and I wanted to isolate those medial sounds, even though I told you I wasn't going to, but I did have her do that, and she actually did fairly well on that because she followed my cue to tap them on her fingers, and she had to just say the vowel sound. She didn't have to link it to the letter or name or anything like that. So we did just the visual drill. We didn't do the blending drill quite yet because she hadn't learned any vowels yet. That went fine. She's in a school that uses Fundations. So the keywords and the materials that I use for my structured literacy teaching are the same as what she saw in school. So that felt familiar to her. Yet she did have to, if I held up like the B card, you know, with just the little flashcard with the letter B on it, she did have to refer to this little ABC strip that I have on everybody's desks, etc. And she saw the little picture and would look down at it and say B, bat, bu. And same for pretty much all the consonants. I also noticed that she added a schwa sound to the end of things. So she was saying g, k, m, when really she should have been saying g, k, m. So I modeled to her, and for any consonant where she did not clip that schwa sound, that off of the consonant sound, I would model to her, and I would go like this with my fingers. Oh, let's clip that extra part off. We don't need the B, bat, b, b, not b, just b. So I had to do a little bit of modeling there, and I think after a few lessons with me giving her feedback, she'll get the hang of that. We also had a really nice conversation about the structure of language based on vowels versus consonants. I showed her a little alphabet poster, the same kind that she uses in school, and said, do you know why some of these cards are yellow and some are pink? Has anyone ever told you that? And she knew, okay, all the pink ones are the vowels. And I said, does anyone ever tell you why they're vowels? And she said, no. So we talked about vowels being open mouth sounds and consonants being blocked sounds. And this is the kind of stuff that you don't plan a whole lesson around it. It's just you setting the stage, you setting up these kids for intervention. And so my first few lessons, I often talk a lot about vowels versus consonants and the terminology and the structure of things. And I tell them, and I told her, this is a system. English language is a code. Just so happens it's a very complicated code, but don't worry, I'm an expert at this code, and I will help untangle it for you, and I will help you make sense of it. It's really important that my students buy into that idea right from the beginning, because otherwise I'm just teaching them to memorize things, right? They're just thinking she's got flashcards, she's making me memorize. I want them to see that it's a system, just like math is a system, right? We have to understand when we do 2 + 3 = 5, we have to understand why. We have to know the concept of addition and what it means to combine, right? Same thing with the English language and with reading and spelling. We're combining those sounds and snapping them together. And I need to have her know that that's what we're doing here. We're not just memorizing words. Anyway, so that was really good. And she really perked up when I started talking about the structure and the code. And I think it's because this is so hard for her, that was really interesting for somebody to actually explain to her how it works. I skipped over sight words. Our conversation went pretty long, so we didn't get to that. So when I got to the new concept, I did do my plan, but I realized right away while she was reading that this was going to be hard. And I wrote in my notes here, overshot. Short A gave us plenty to work on. Don't move on from this yet. And let me tell you what I mean, how I overshot here. Okay, so row 1, so this is my lesson plan. Hers, I had a printout of these words. This is not what she read. She read a nice student-friendly version. So row 1 was okay. I had her circle. Oh no, that was for the sentences. Okay, so row 1 was okay. Then row 2, she said made, bake, said. So there were a lot of errors in there. So I think for row 1, she was doing her sounding out and blending. And then when it came down to here, she kind of reverted back to her standard, which is just to spit something out there. Now, I should mention for this, I told her, I said, I want you to practice 1 row at a time. So I gave her a tracker, like a little bookmark thingy. And on her student page, she read and whispered. I had her whisper to herself, not do it silently, because then some kids are just like, done. I had her whisper, and she really was, and then she read it. And then I had her whisper this one, but that did not come out so well. So we gave some corrections. She read this one. Sorry, I didn't check that, so that's hard. And then for this last one, we have laid for this one. So I'm seeing a couple things here. I'm seeing a BD issue, which I saw plenty of that on her pretest. And I'm also seeing her use long vowel sounds, probably because in 2nd grade, she's doing a tons of vowel teams and vowel consonant E. So she's studying long vowels a lot. So those patterns are really mixed up for her. Then before we did the sentences, I had her use a little pink color pencil and circle all the short A's. And I had her go, ah, ah, ah. And we talked about the shape of her mouth while she was previewing it. Then I said, okay, now that you know all these words say ah, I want you to whisper read, then read it aloud when you're ready. But we had a long A issue there. She said pate, and here she said lad. So even with my careful teaching, even though I zoomed it into just short A, even though I had her preview it and rehearse, she still made the same errors that I saw her make in her pretest. And this is telling me, okay, this is a pretty serious impairment here. I am thinking dyslexia with this student based on what I've seen so far, but we'll see. So I told myself, no, I am not going to squeeze short O into this lesson. This is too much. So we got out the Wilson magnets, but as you can see, I planned to switch between short A and short O, and that wasn't going to work. So I just had to cross out my short A ones and, whatever. Or my short O's, and I just kept it with A. So I wouldn't have done that one either. So normally, I don't even think we got this far. I think we ended at bag. That's probably why. Normally above these words, anytime a student gets one right, I would go like that with a check. She wasn't doing any of this independently. This was hard for her. I know she has these in school, but they might have used the magnets a different way. The way I used the magnets was I had her spell the word cap, and then I said change cap to lap. So she had to know app, app. Oh, my first magnet changes. Get rid of the C, take the L, put it in. She had to know how to do that. This was very confusing to her. I don't think she's done this before. And this is a great phonemic awareness and phonics activity. It's blending the two because they really have to isolate where the changes and add, delete. So it's just like what we were doing. It's just like the kind of stuff that I'd be doing up here, it's just at the sound level, but now I'm integrating print. After a few lessons of this, I noticed the kids understand what the task is and they get going with it. So I had to show her, no, we're going to tap each one out one at a time. And so we really did this together. This was not an independent activity. So that's why I didn't bother checking anything yes or no, because there was a lot of hand holding. Okay. In the beginning, when I'm getting to know a student, I often plan a lot of extra activities just to see what kinds of stuff is exciting or useful to them in a lesson and so on. So this is stuff I happen to have at my studio. I happen to have these activities printed out, easily accessible. So I knew when things were getting not overwhelming, but when things were getting heavy for her, I knew it made sense to do a game break. So we did one of those 4 in a row sheets that I might have showed you. And it's just short A words everywhere. And she just uses a paint stamper and stamps and reads. So she basically was just spending a ton of time reading short A words, but it still felt fun and she loved it. And we play against each other and so on. So that is usually a big hit. And if you control it to your target sound or pattern or syllable type, then this is still a very structured activity, even though it feels playful. So again, for spelling, I had to cut out all my short O plans because I wasn't going to do that, although I forgot and I kept this one. So I did her sounds. I asked her, it says ah, and so on and so on. And she did all of that. And her B's and D's, she had to look at the little alphabet strip on the desk. And because B's and D's came up so often, pretty much every time she saw me and D, it made me think, okay, we need to do a whole lesson on that. There was also some issues, I guess, P and Q. I think she might have made one of her, I forget what makes me think that. But she needed that lesson as well. So she did her sentence, mom and dad. So I knew gave and little would be unfair to ask her, so that I underlined them just as a note to myself, like, that's probably pushing it though, even though those might be high frequency words that she might have memorized. And of course she does not. And silly me, I had an O word in there. So that's not my ideal sentence, but I wanted to try to keep it light. So a lot of times you'll see kids do a capital D so they can avoid having to deal with which way the lowercase one goes. And this means, oops, she forgot her punctuation. Okay, so I had this High Noon chapter book in mind. That's a controlled chapter book, but after seeing how much short A was, I grabbed another book instead. So I grabbed Primary Phonics, Mac, and Tab. This is why it's helpful to have a bunch of things with you those first few lessons. So this is their short A book, so it only features short A, so it's very controlled. And I know it's black and white, it's lame, but this gives us an opportunity to just practice short A. So to preview the game, I have this game called Moose or Pop, where I have the story sentences written out. Whoa, sorry. So I've gone through, these are just sentence strips from the dollar store that I cut in half, and I like them because they're thick, so you can just write right on them and the ink doesn't show through. And I set them all up. So then I did all the vowels in A in red. And then I had a couple other cards with sight words on them. These are some sight words in the story, and this one says moose. So when you get the moose card, you stop the game and go, moose, and then the round's over. So if we were playing, I have the cards, you know, all on, and we did this on the floor. It's always fun to sit on the floor and switch it up if you're in person with kids. We did it like that, and we would just draw a card. And oh, what do you know? I got moose on the first try. Anyways, but if we didn't, we draw a card, sound it out, read it together, and we just take turns back and forth until someone draws moose. Then I told her, I said, guess what? All those sentences you just read came right from the story. So you know how to read the story. Now, the thing about the story is the vowels are not in red. So our eyes are going to have to notice when we see that vowel, that A, and we're going to have to get our mouth in the short A position. Ah. And she felt confident. And sometimes she would read a sentence in here and say, oh, I read that card. That one was one of mine. And so she did a really nice job with that. And I hope that we can get past this, because this is early first grade level. I hope that the second grader and I can move past it, because it's the middle of second grade. But as I realized, it doesn't matter if I want to move faster. This is as fast as the pace that she can go right now. So perhaps with a few weeks of really careful instruction, the wheels will start turning and we'll start to crank it a little bit faster. So to myself, I wrote that, okay, I see some BD reversals. We're going to have to linger linger in short A. So a lot of times what I do is if I need to linger on a vowel or a concept, I'll teach something else, but not something so complicated that it doesn't allow me to still focus on this. So if I added in another short vowel, that would really be cutting into my short A instruction. But if I do a reversal lesson on these consonants, or if I did a whole lesson on Y yellow Y, or H hat or G game G, you know, some kind of consonant that kids mess up with frequently, that would allow me to kind of linger and spend more time on the vowel, because we wouldn't be adding any new vowels to the mix. So I planned that lesson already. Let me show you what I have planned. Okay, so I decided that this is going to be a BD lesson. And to make our Heggerty, our phonemic awareness drill a little bit more interesting, I'm going to have a whiteboard and we're going to have a tally chart for long versus short. So I'm going to have her isolate the medial sounds. I'll say the word dream, and she'll E, and I'll say long or short, because I want to integrate this terminology. Last week we talked about consonants and vowels. This week I want to talk about the concept of long versus short vowels. Now, I'm not actually teaching her any spellings of long vowels yet. No, we're just talking about the fact that there are different sounds that vowels can make. And this is important for me to talk about because she's covered it months ago in school. In the middle of first grade, she would have started to learn how to read long vowels. So these terms have already been thrown around and she probably doesn't understand what they mean. So it'd be nice to start making sense of that structure for her even before we get to the time when we're actually going to read long vowels. Then it will make her understand that all these short vowels we're working on, that's just one part of the puzzle. And that will help to kind of organize things in her brain. Okay. We're doing the visual drill, so I'll quiz her on 8 to 10 consonants. We're going to keep reminding her to drop that schwa. Whoops, and obviously she'll be quizzed on short A. The blending drill will be only with A, apple, A. That's the only vowel she's got so far to blend with. And I said I'm going to focus on word families. That means I'll have at, and I'll show her, look at this, we've got the at word family. Okay, watch me. I'm going to change the consonant in the first place. Let's see if we can blend these words. And this might help her. I want to do some orthographic mapping. I want to move these patterns like into that area of her brain where she recognizes them rapidly. Not because she's just memorizing words. No, she knows that at is made up of at, but she doesn't have to stop and sound it out anymore. That is so important. And sometimes doing word families, as long as you also are doing full synthetic phonics where you're understanding and isolating each sound, but word families can get her over that hump. And maybe there's something she can automatically blend or recognize rapidly. So I could also do, you know, things like A, P, A, G, A, D. And each time I'm going to change the word family, I'm going to say, okay, let's pause. Now we have app, app. All right, watch me change the first consonant when we do our app words. And I'm hoping to make these patterns become automatic for her. All right, I'm holding off on sight words again. So maybe I'd squeeze in a game just to kind of see what she's got, but I'm not getting into sight word land until I get some momentum with sounding out words. Okay, my new concept. I'll briefly review vowels and consonants. Oh, our language is complex. It's a code. One thing that makes our language so tricky is that some of our letter shapes are similar. What letter shapes get you confused? So that was brief. I've turned on her brain so she's ready. And then something we would do is a picture sort. So I have these little cards. I'm not at work right now, so I don't have them, but I have little cards with boy, ball, bucket, and then doll, drum, door, whatever, you know, some D's. And she would have to hear the sounds and separate them. You know, I would just do like maybe 6 pictures total. We're not going to get carried away here. This is just a brief time. Good. We know they have different sounds. Then I would bring in the visuals and we would talk about that. Let me show you what I've got planned for this lesson. It's not that she's never seen these words before, it's that they're hard. Well, actually, let me show you this one first. So this, well, I'm going to cut up so she can bring one, you know, one to school, one to home, whatever. We're going to talk about A, B, C, D, E. So this is our alphabet. Our B has first the bat, bounce up to the ball, and our D is actually going to start right here. First the drum, then the stick. And I have the C right next to it so she can see that our D starts with a C. It does not start up here and loop around. It's way more helpful for kids if they learn that D starts with that magic C shape. B starts up high at the tippity top, straight down that bat, bounce up to the ball. So I'm going to talk a lot about this. This one is less about like sound symbol correspondence because she already knows that capital B says both, lowercase d says duh. That's not the problem. The problem here is the visual issue of these tricky letters. So I've got these big pictures for her. We're going to color these and cut them out and put them into her little reference notebook. I have another copy for her to take home if she wants. And of course, we're going to be doing some tactile work. This is a big multi-sensory thing. So I could be using any of my tactile tools. The one that I'm going to be doing is a little chalkboard, and she uses a wet sponge for the wet part, and she's going to write on the black chalkboard the letter B. Then she takes a little crumpled up paper towel, traces on top of it to dry her little puddle. Then she takes a little piece of chalk and writes the letter B. So she writes B 3 times, first with a wet sponge, then with a paper towel, and then with chalk. This is called wet, dry, try. And we can do that for B and D. That's our sort of anchoring moment. And we, you know, I'll glue those pictures into her notebook. I know we haven't talked about the notebooks yet. We'll deal with that in the reading clinic. I do have a letter sort that I might do now. That would be different than the picture sort. The letter sort would actually be all different B's and D's that we'd sort into 2 piles. This is going to become a daily drill that we just do up here. Up in this zone, I might add in another row for a little BD warm up every day. We'll do that for a few weeks. Anyways, we're going to look here. Okay, what do our eyes see? Okay, that was a terrible one to start with, a B and a D on my first word. No, that was too hard. I meant to do all words that start with B in this row, but why would I give her that challenge? Poor choice. Row 2, I'd ask her what we see. Oh, we see first the bat, then the ball, all those B words at the end. What do we see here? Oh, we see all these D's at the end. So we're oh, and this is our like mixed up kind of challenge row. Well, no, I guess, look at that. Bad can go in the end. That's better. These are still D's at the end. And notice how this is also not only are we working on B and D, but I'm also getting to linger here on short A and talk about that ah sound. We're going to do our Wilson magnets again. I'm going to reminder how we sound it out, and we're going to change one thing at a time. I'll put the B and D magnet right at the top or something, and we're going to talk about, well, how do we tell them apart? And we'll look at this, you know, the black stick for the B and watch how the bump comes out. And for the D, we'll look for the belly for, you know, and things like that. So I'll give her some little pointers on that. And then here we go. We're going to go through B's, D's over and over in these words. I've also got some options again, just if we need to loosen it up. I've got some filler and some practice. My spelling is very BD heavy. Look at this. I'm always quizzing my new concept first, but including my review one. I've got some sight words here. I should have underlined them. These are things based on her spelling so far. I think she'll probably get my in and the, but who knows. But I wouldn't hold it against her if she spelled some of her sight words wrong. I'm just going to pause on worrying about that for now. I know that she really liked playing that moose game last time, but this time I printed out those Spire stories that I was showing you so she can highlight her short A's, and they have a lot of B's and D's in them too. They also have am and an, which we haven't taught, but we can work on that. All right, so I hope this gives you a realistic understanding of what's happening in the mind of a reading specialist as we do an intervention lesson. We realize how it landed with the child, how they interacted with the material. We take notes, we reflect, and we think about what we need to do next time. Thanks.